Hi guys, so before we get into it, a couple of the usual disclaimers. Number one, there will be mild spoilers today. Number two, you'll find all my other reviews for Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist. So I watched Children of the Corn 5 Fields of Terror just the other night, and I immediately found myself liking it before I'd watched a single frame, because that subtitle is awesome. Easily the best of the series so far. Fields of Terror. It reminds me of something else that's of terror that I can't quite put my finger on. So they've gone for a Friday the 13th type movie this time, but obviously within a Children of the Corn type framework. So we've got a group of youngsters who drive into the world of cornfields in two separate cars. They're all horny and desperate for alcohol. You know the types. You've seen them a million times before, but it's not long before they start getting picked off by murderous children. There's a bit more to it than that. So collectively, this group of youngsters are all getting over the death of a friend who died by suicide. And later on in the film, it's revealed that one of the murderous children's group is related to one of our protagonists, as unlikely as that would be. In terms of how the children themselves are able to come back after what happened at the end of the previous film, well, it turns out that he who walks behind the rose now has an ever-burning fire contained within a giant vat, and this fire is able to once again mind control local kids as long as someone is sacrificed to the fire every now and again, and there's an adult now in charge of the kids. To be honest, at this point of the series, there's so little connectivity between the films. I don't really care how we get the plot rolling again. It's similar to Nightmare on Elm Street. By the time you get to like the fourth or the fifth movie, it's like, yeah, I know you're going to come up with some random bollocks so that we can have another sequel, so just get on with it. Oh, a dog has pissed on some bones. Fine, whatever. Oh, a magic fire that brings kids back to life. Fine, whatever, get on with it. This film is also the best for having well-known actors. This franchise does very well on this score, actually. The first film had Linda Hamilton. The fourth one had Naomi Watts. And this one has Eva Mendes in what was presumably a very early role for her. Come to think of it, I've not heard the name Eva Mendes in years, so I'm guessing that she's past the peak of her career at this point. But when she did this film, she was presumably still in her 20s, because she looks very good in this. Kane Hodder is also in the film. He plays a barman. He still would have been Jason at this point of his career, so obviously this was just a little side project, a way to earn himself a few more bucks, but I doubt he did more than a day's work here. And we've also got David Carradine, who plays the leader of the kiddie cult. That sounds really bad, doesn't it? He's the leader of the murderous children. He's only got 2 scenes, but he really makes them count. This is a very charismatic actor. I mostly remember him from the Kill Bill movies, but I kind of liked him in this, and I was very surprised just to see him in the film, actually. This film continues the series tradition of filming in a brand new state of America from anywhere we've used before. I think the story is still meant to be set in Nebraska, but the script doesn't use that word directly, I suspect to avoid ridicule, because where they filmed, it doesn't look very Nebraska-y. Like, I looked at the hills and mountains in the background, and I had a little private bet with myself that maybe they'd done the film in Utah. But it turns out it was shot in California, this. Those are Californian hills you can see in the distance. But the cinematography is probably the best that it's been since the second movie. There's lots of really picturesque scenes in this film. There's a good chunk of the film set during daylight hours. I think that's a good thing to aspire to for any Children of the Corn movie, because the characters are always going to be so isolated in these films, being in these rural areas, miles from anywhere, that in terms of their survival chances, it doesn't really make any difference whether it's daytime or nighttime. So you might as well choose daytime whenever you can to take advantage of the scenery. The corn feels different in this film as well. They definitely do things slightly different in California, because like the corn stalks are all mixed up. It's very random. When I picture corn stalks in my head, I just think of like rows and rows of neat corn stalks where if people run through them, they can probably pick up a decent bit of speed as long as they're going in a straight line. But in this film, it's kind of crunchy underfoot because everything's just kind of mixed, and that just makes it harder for the characters to escape the children. But there's a good few scenes that take place in the corn, which was cool. Sadly, the main child villain is terrible. So, with the exception of part 4, he who walks behind the rose always likes to nominate an annoying little shit to be his spokesman in these movies, and this time he's really surpassed himself. I could not stand the main child here, although at least we get to see him die. That's not always a privilege we get, but no, this time we get to see this kid sent to the fires of hell near the end, and that was a moment I really enjoyed, believe me. The other kids are used quite well because these are clearly the same actors who are popping up throughout the film, just usually loitering in the background with intent, carrying various weapons, and they've got scowls on their faces. But near the end, when fights break out between the various protagonists and the children, at least these aren't just random extras who've turned up just for those fights. No, these are clearly established red shirts who have been seen in the film up to that point. So it feels like these fights have got more on them. But for this film, a lot of the murderous children are of the sorts of ages of like 17, 18, rather than being really young, like the main kid, Elijah. And I think the reason they've done this is so that a lot of the fights can feel a lot more even, because it's almost like two adults going at it. But the thing is, they've cast a lot of people who are probably in their mid-20s. And the reason why this is a problem is that there's this one scene where Elijah's addressing his brethren, and he's explaining something about how they need more volunteers to jump into the fire, but they've got to be at least 18 years old. But I'm looking around all these kids and I'm thinking like half the kids in this group are probably in their mid-20s because of the actors that have been cast. Imagine being a small-time actor in Hollywood and your agent rings you up for the first time in a month and says, I've got something for you. Now I need you to sort of try and look 18 if you can, because the role I've got for you is playing one of the brats in Children of the Corn 10. It doesn't pay a lot, but they're going to give you loads of baskets of corn to take home. You'll get a few meals out of it, I promise. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. Linda Hamilton started off in one of these. The kills are more than reasonable, I'd say. There are a couple of sharp-edged deaths where I feel the camera moves away a little bit too soon, so you can't see the full extent of the gore. There are a couple of really good fire deaths, though, where you get stuntmen on fire the way that they used to do it back in the day. And David Carradine's death is probably the best of all. The way he dies is so out of the blue and random, but it looks awesome, and it's probably the most creative moment in this entire movie. There's one kill that absolutely does not work in any way you slice it, and that's with the girl who sacrifices herself. She crosses over to the other side, and just as she's done that, throws herself into the fires for no other reason than she's doing He Who Walks Behind the Rose a favour somehow. But there's been no indication up until this point in the movie that she's going to switch sides. They should have had some kind of arc where you can clearly see this coming somehow throughout the story, but it just doesn't happen. Maybe they could have made her a really religious girl who's not really into all the fornicating and stuff that her friends are into, and maybe she misidentifies He Who Walks Behind the Rose as her own Christian god. They could have done something like that. But as it is, the moment where she jumps into the fires, there's no signpost for it, and as a result, it's very weird, really weird. Overall, I would say that this is another solid Children of the Corn sequel. I watched this on a Friday night, and I certainly didn't feel like my night was wasted at all. I'm even going to finish with one additional bit of praise. So I do feel like when it comes to these rural, back of beyond type horror movies, that it's become a little bit of a cliche that people who work in the local area will end up being secondary villains. So if you've got like a petrol pump attendant, a gas attendant, or a local sheriff, they will turn out to be working for the chainsaw family, or the murderous kids, or the woods-dwelling human cannibals, whoever the villains are. I've seen this so many times that it's not a surprise anymore. It's actually started to piss me off whenever I see this in movies. But this film stays away from that, and it could have fallen into that trap because we have firemen in this, policemen. None of them turn out to be working for the cull, and I really appreciated that. These are local people who, yes, they're quite cynical when drinking teens turn up in the area, but at the same time, they will still back the drinking teens over a murderous cult. So I kind of liked that. Right, it's time to get to the fields of terror, I mean bag of terror, so I can show you what score I'm going to give this movie. So we've got 1, 2, 3 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. I think this is the same score I gave the previous film. So yeah, this series continues to provide us with good doses of serviceable horror, and I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing what part 6 holds. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.